Hey, how are you doing? I'm Mike Fontanopolis, academic coach here for Springdale Public Schools. Today, I want to chat with you about how to cite a document in the body of a DBQ essay. And this is a question I get quite a bit from students, especially new students to the AP history process. Perhaps a lot of times that's sophomores in an AP world history class. And that is, as they're getting ready to write their first DBQ, they really start to get anxious about, well, how do I take what the documents are saying and put that in an actual essay and make that, get its points and, et cetera. And so that's what this essay is all, or that's what this video is all about. And so sit back and relax, and let's try to learn something here. I've given you here a link to the actual rubric that we're going to be using to score your essays in the future. So please take a look at that. We're going to be using the AP World History DBQ from this year's 2020 in the course exam. I was a reader, as I have been for the last 13 years for the College Board in AP World History. And I got a chance to, again, see about 500 to 750 responses. And then, of course, sitting at that table, there was a lot more of that. And so let's see what students were doing and how you can get your points and ensure that you're doing a great job. First things first is you need to use a document and then support the document. And then you also, if you want to get those reasoning skills, those analysis skills, then you're going to get into that HIP skill, or those, if you're wanting those points, those reasoning analysis points, you got to use that HIP skill. I've made a video for that. You can go back and check that out if you haven't already. So again, we need to use and support. And again, this year the prompt was you had to just use 4. You didn't. There was only 5 in the DBQ, and they really only required you to do that with 4 of them. So you could have omitted an entire document if you wanted to. I didn't think there was a need to, because they all made sense to what the question was asking. But anyway, there you go. Each year, the rubric kind of changes slightly. So make sure you get with your teacher on what that rubric is. And of course, you can go online to the College Board and they'll make sure that you understand it too. The first thing you need to ensure that your documents are supporting your argument. And that is to say, you need to know what the prompt is asking. So do not walk away from the prompt and start writing until you know what's going on. And this prompt is all about, what is the approach? You're probably going to say the word approach. The approach to modernity, and I say that word, but it's modernization. That is to say, folks were not modern and then they become modern. And what was their approach? And so immediately you got to start thinking that there's probably going to be people who were for it, and then there's people that are kind of against it. And especially once you start reading document 1, you see that this guy's he's creating a whole new world of the Tanzimat reforms, new rights, just like the West, like the Enlightened. You've got to start thinking there's got to be some documents that rhyme with this, and there's got to be some documents that are polar opposites of this. And so this is where I try to say to kids, do not treat these documents like Christmas presents. And that is to say, you have no idea what's going on when you open up the next one. You do have an idea. If you have somewhat of an inquisitive mind, and you're sitting there and you're going, okay, this is the prompt. My first document is totally for modernization. His approach was to create the Tanzimat. So what's the second? There's got to be another document, maybe 2 more documents that go along with document 1. The College Board is not going to give you 5 documents that are all over the board with 5 different approaches. I promise you they're not. There's going to be those that are for it. There's going to be those that are against it. And there's going to be some that maybe have a mediocre or moderate approach. And so that's why they want to know to what extent, so that you can start to kind of, vacillate from that in that comparison essay. These guys said this, those guys said that. And so now you can really start to understand. That's what I mean by, do you understand what the prompt is asking? And then do you understand next? Do you understand what the documents are suggesting? And so that's kind of where we're heading there. And again, if you have some insight and some foresight, you can really start to speed up your reading, because you can kind of get in there and understand, probably what they were going to say to begin with. And then, of course, lastly, they are saying the same thing throughout different voices. What is it they're supporting? And again, this is where you're going to start to see documents rhyming with each other. Okay, so keep that in mind. I try to use verbs to live by as we write. Sometimes you kind of forget maybe, but if it were me and I were you, teachers throughout our district, I know use verbs to live by. They put them on their walls, especially our history teachers. And again, if you're trying to make a document come alive, it's better than to say, because they really don't say anything. And that's really not a good analysis word. I like analytical words. And so let's get in there and see what that might, documents imply, they relate, they depict. These last three, illustrate, demonstrate, suggest. Those are the ones that I always kind of lean on. Even in writing essay or emails to friends and to colleagues and things of that nature, these are great words to show that something is going on in the world of analysis. Even though you might not be analyzing currently right then, you're going to. So use these words as you write about the documents, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. Again, we never quote. Quoting and just putting words down is not a college skill. Your skill is your ability to show your reader how well you work with documents. And by quoting them shows that you do not work well with documents, but you want to infer them. You want to be able to read them and place them down in your own words, how they go towards answering the question. Again, reading a document, inferring that document, applying that inference, that's a high level thinking skill. That demonstrates complexity. And that's the kind of thing that, again, you would associate with a college level class. How the doc reads versus how it will support your argument can sometimes be two different things. You're going to see that in just a second. Document one is a total answer to the question. He's for it. He creates the tanzimat reforms. He's reforming. So his approach is to reform. Document two, he starts talking about how the Chinese were a complete mess. And then if you got to just keep reading it to kind of, okay, so what's his approach? So see, if you just describe document two, you're going to be off. You're off, and you're not getting your point. So again, you've got to show how it goes back to the prompt. And what he's doing is he's warning his people. If we act like the Chinese and not modernize, then we're in trouble. That's where you've got to infer. So again, takes a little bit of a skill there. Slowing down and inferring is a conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reading. So again, there you go. So we need to understand the prompt, which hopefully we do. And then we've got the document. There's document one. And again, I don't want to read these documents in front of you because you've already read these, but document one is for it. I'm going to just put our little emoji up here. His approach is to create a reform movement that is much like the West. His enlightenment moment of entitled to public hearings. Religious groups have security, that is to say freedom of religion, buy and sell freely, own property rights. So again, he's trying to act like the West. And this is a Muslim, male-dominated society that is bending. They're starting to switch now. And again, this is exactly what, if you know your Ottoman history, you know that this is going on because the Ottoman Empire had been fragmenting, been broken apart. The Greeks had already done that. They broke away. Bulgaria broke away. And of course, Egypt had started to be a thorn in their side. And so again, the Ottoman Empire was starting to figure out, how do we not, dissolve? Well, we got to change. So there you go. So then we get into document two. And again, I picked document two. I think it goes along with this because look what he's doing. He's saying basically between states that refuse to apply modern civilization, you're going to be inferior to. Consider what happened to the Chinese a few years ago, talking about the Opium Wars and how they got beat by just 20,000 Europeans. This entire Chinese state comes down. And so again, this is where kids would misinterpret this because they just started basically talking about this document by itself and not inferring how it goes back to the prompt. And what his approach is we need to change our military. Look who he's talking to. He's probably talking to other statesmen in the Ottoman Empire that were probably dragging their feet and not wanting to become modern, but were, kind of bent on keeping their old culture. Well, this guy's basically saying we can't do that. Look at these guys as a great example as to why. And he might even be alluding to the fact that, hey, if we don't become modern, we're probably not going to be able to keep the other Europeans out of our empire too. So again, he's warning. That's what I'm going at here. Here's that's POV and all that kind of stuff. And again, a lot of kids hit on that, and then some kids missed it because again, they're just trying to just give you little small book reports, and that's not what this is all about. And then finally, document 5. Document 5 is a ruler. He's the elite, and he is basically trying to become modern through an economic fashion, through factories, machinery, etc. He wants new factories, new machineries. He wants the people that are using their hands and doing things by hand, which is slow and cumbersome. He wants that to stop. And but the people in Afghanistan think that he's trying to send money out of the country, that he's trying to eradicate their jobs. They're slow to do what it is that he's wanting to do. But that's where kids would mess up. They would sit there and think that this is like blending in with the Chinese and the Russians. But notice it's the common folk of the land that wanted to keep the old culture. The essay is about non-Western elites. This is a non-Western elite, and he wants to, get going. He wants to modernize his world. And of course, he's looking back 20 years later, right? He's writing this in 1900, and he's saying this is what it was like 20 years ago. And so maybe he's looking through rose-colored glasses, or he's looking in hindsight. So there's a POV moment that we could get into as well. Again, let's see what else we got here. So the first thing I'm going to lead into is my topic sentence. But first, I want to tell you kind of what's been going on up to this point. Paragraph 1 is our thesis, right? Paragraph 2 was our contextualization. And then paragraph 3 is where we're going to probably talk about docs 3 and 4, because these are the ones that did not like modernity. They didn't want to become modern. And then paragraph 4 is going to be the big boy. This is going to be our payoff, because it's docs 1, 2, 5. And this is where I'm also going to put my evidence beyond the doc, which is about Japan and how they too, not even though they're not mentioned in the docs, they too wanted to modernize. So again, all that's coming, and we're going to be in paragraph 4 now. And the first thing I'm going to do is have a transitional sentence, which is my topic sentence as well. So keep that in mind. Even though there were some non-Western elites who refused or minimized modernization, again, I'm alluding to what the paragraph we just left, which was paragraph 3, the Chinese and the Russian approach to a larger extent. Again, I'm trying to continue on with that word extent because that's in the prompt. There were other elites whose approach to modernization was welcoming and encouraging. So the rest of this essay is going to be welcoming and encouraging to a larger extent, because there's more of these people that were like this than there was that were negative. So there you go. This is my way of also introducing complexity. I'm staying complex. I'm not writing like Frankenstein, where I'm just putting down words that go with the actual documents, but I'm trying to make this thing tell a story, a very good story, by the way. So document 1, this is me citing the document. I'm in the same paragraph, and this is the next sentence after that opening sentence. For example, the Muslim-oriented Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, I put it in parentheses. The reason I do that is because I want my reader to know that I'm talking about document 1. I'm using it. And so here comes my now supporting. Modernizing by including all religions. In the Tanzimat reform, this document depicts, verb to live by, him encouraging private property. He is putting an end to public executions. That's probably a little bit of history because there's nothing in there talking about that. But again, the Muslims, they would behead, obviously, early on, legalistic society that it was, like many societies at that time, while enhancing personal rights. He was hoping to emulate the West and their enlightened ideals. Again, another hip moment. I'm talking about history there. And he's trying to, stop the fragmentation of his dying empire, which again, that's another history moment. They called it the sick man of Europe. So again, here's my hip moment, and here's my supports, and there's my using, right? Very good. Again, I'm not going to hide document 2. I let you know that I'm going to use it. Also, the Ottoman statesman in parentheses, doc 2, don't hide it. demonstrates a welcoming approach to the modern. Notice that I'm not saying document 2 says, no, I'm using a story here. And here comes my demonstrates. Ottoman statesman demonstrates a welcoming approach to modernization. Again, I'm using the same words from the prompt over and over and over, and it's just going to get you points. He is using the Chinese as an example of their inability to defeat the British. He is also encouraging a modern military. And then he goes on to say he's probably referring back to a decade earlier, Crimean War, where the British soundly defeated the Russians. Again, that's history. That's from the hip moment. This is a subtle announcement to slow conforming Turkish elites, suggesting modern weaponry is needed, not just for taking over others, but possibly protection from other Europeans like the British. And here I saw students talking about how the Ottomans were probably fearful of cutting their beards because, again, you'd need the beards removed so that they could shoot a blasting cap weapon. And again, you can get into the pig fats and the other animal fats that are being used for the weapons. This is where you get the movement of the Young Turks. And again, I had a lot of students talking about that here in this document for their hip moment. It's very true. We got a little bit of POV here. We got some history in here. We got some, again, some supports and using. So now we've done that with 2 documents. And finally, our last document, same paragraph, moving right down the line. We got document 5 to talk about. Furthermore, there's another F word. I love those. First, furthermore, finally. I love those words because it just kind of keeps your reader going, keeps you going. The ruler of the Afghan world was also encouraging a modernization as he portrayed forward-thinking economics. According to him, he was able to stay the course of modernity even in the face of ignorant publics which wanted to act like Chinese and Russian elites. In this case, they wanted to labor via their hands, blah, blah, blah. Of course, he could be speaking in hindsight as he looks back through rose-colored glasses of how effective he was trying to be as this document was published 20 years. This is me showing my reader that I'm paying attention to the dates and that I'm seeing that this guy might be a little bit inaccurate in his thinking and maybe showing the world how awesome he is, or maybe being pitiful, etc. So again, just a little bit of POV there, but some history in there, some supports, and of course using. Bam. Now you've done it for all 3 docs. You've got those 3 out of the way. Way to go. And then lastly, I want to chat about the evidence beyond the doc. I'm adding this on to the end of this paragraph. If you wanted to start another paragraph, again, not a bad idea. I'm just sticking it right on there. Another non-Western elite to encourage and welcome modernization was the Meiji of Japan. Notice I didn't say Japan. Japan is kind of the nation. It's the place. The Meiji is the elite. He is the elite. And that's what the question's about. Not mentioned in the documents. The Meiji was restored in the second half of the century through the Meiji Restoration. And there you are talking about Meiji Restoration and how they got rid of the shogun. The Tokugawa was gone. And we're going to get after any American that's coming in the future because you were, influenced by Commodore Matthew Perry, all that stuff. So there you go. And then, of course, your finished product looks a little bit something like this. That's your paragraph as you're going in. And again, down here's where you could start another paragraph, another non-Western elite. Again, this is kind of simple when you start to see what you've done. Topic sentence, document 1, document 2, document 5. And then you finally start talking about evidence beyond the doc. Bam. This is this is how you would cite your documents in the body of a paragraph. And hopefully this helps. Again, the only way to get better at this is through practice, practice, practice. And hopefully this will work for you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to your teacher. And as always, you can reach out to me too. I'm Mike Bottenopoulos, your academic coach for Springdale Public Schools. Good luck to you in all that you do in your AP classes.